Omar Khadr is not an extremist, his father says. He believes it was the atrocities committed by the Assad regime that drove the 19-year-old to Syria. His story, a familiar one. 6 months after joining an al-Qaeda-affiliated group, a disillusioned Omar decided it was time to come home. This is not jihad, Zaid recalls his son telling him on a call from Syria. The different factions are killing each other. I don't want to die for nothing, his son told him. In June of last year, Omar was detained when he arrived in Amman. He was tried and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Omar is from Az-Zarqa, just a half-hour's drive from Amman. It is from this Jordanian city that the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq, that's ISIS's predecessor, the man known as Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, came from. And in recent years, many of the estimated 2,000 Jordanians who went to fight in Syria also came from here, from Zarqa. While Omar may have been lured into the fight by his beliefs, for others, it's different reasons. We find Zarqa's mayor on the streets, meeting residents and listening to their complaints. He tells us nearly 20% of the city's youth are unemployed, and as in most areas of Jordan, people here are struggling to make ends meet. Many of Zarqa's youth were killed in Syria, Iraq, and other conflicts because of the economic situation, because poverty and neglect create fertile ground for these young men to join these terrorist organizations, he says. With a third of the country's youth jobless, Jordan's announced plans to revive the economy. One of its priorities is to create tens of thousands of new jobs over the next 5 years. Omar's father says prison has changed him. I feel he's more religious now. It's more apparent. He grew a beard. He reads the Quran with his friends. His spirits are high. He tells me, they can sentence me to 20 years. I do not care. Don't bother yourself, father. This is their policy, Zaid says. The Jordanian government has a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to its broad and wide-reaching anti-terrorism law.
Basically, we apply the law. What the Jordanian laws are saying is that you cannot emphasize, you cannot sympathize, you cannot do anything that will be perceived as supportive of terrorist and extremist organizations.
But some question that approach. With what right do they jail these youth for 3 or 5 years? It's a very harsh sentence. It is in these cases that they create real terrorists out of them. They made a mistake and went, but they didn't harm Jordan, he says. Officials say young men like Omar are rehabilitated in jail. For Jordan, they're a threat it can't afford not to contain.